Hello, this is Marian Pena coming to you from seemstobeso.com. Today is the third week, at the event EQ Seasons, and this is my second tutorial for my second row. My row today is called Trees in Winter, and it is for the season, of course, winter. The cool part about this row pattern is that it features both pieced blocks and motif blocks. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about in Electric Quilt today. You don't need any extras for this software except a PJ7 file that you may have downloaded and Electric Quilt. You can download many PJ7 files at the Electric Quilt website. They have many to offer that users have sent in to keep archived at their website, and some sites have their own project files. It's just a matter of finding them. There's not a lot of sites that do it, but I have a few on my website, not many, but a few, and this row is no exception. I've made this row specifically for this tutorial, and it is my plan to keep the row free of charge at my website. So, consequently, I'm going to show you today what the main differences are in a project file. So I want to open a project file first. And we come here, we have Electric Quilt open, and it's going to ask us to save any changes to what I currently have open. I don't need to save any changes, so I'm going to take and open this little icon right here. These are all my P7E files, and I don't want to open one of those today. I want to work with a PJ7 file. So this is my winter row, and this is the free row that I'm offering this week, and it will be free for a certain period of time. I don't know for how long at this point. So these are my two rows. This is all pieced blocks, and this one is incorporating both the pieced and the applique. I'm going to show you those differences and how you do them now. Okay, so we have opened the PJ7 file, and we'll find it here in our sketchbook. I'm not going to do any editing on the table, so really I don't need to go to the blocks or anything like that. I'm just going to show you the main differences of the pieced block over the motif here in this window, because I want to try to keep this lesson short. So these are the pieced blocks. As you can see, it says here blocks, the blocks tab. We have the motif tab, and this is motif items. That means they're just shapes only. The difference between a block and a motif is that a block has a background and a motif does not have a background. We don't have any stencils today, so I'm not going to be covering that. But as you can see in Sketchbook, you have the three tabs. And the one you probably use the most is your blocks tab. I use my motifs tab more than anything because I draw a lot of applique. Unless I'm going to add a background to it, which I don't do very often, but I have been known to do it. Is they mainly come here to my motifs tab. I'm going to show you just real quick. I'm going to pull this tree number 6 down. I'm going to go to my color tab, and you can see here with my fabrics, it has a fabric automatically selected. The last one I can't add any background fabric to it. So that's the difference between a motif and a pieced block. Oops. So this is a normal block. Even though this was drawn on the Easy Draw and Patch Draw window, it was drawn on the Applique tab. Every part is drawn on the Applique tab. When you go to the color, you can see here that I can add a background color. I'm just going to undo that because I want to keep that with the snow on the ground. Okay, and so that's the difference between a pieced block or a block and the Motifs tab. On my website, I currently have a tutorial on how you change a block to a motif and a motif to a block. And you can view that if you like. You can also see that video on YouTube as well. Okay, so what we want to really work with today is the quilt layout window. And I want to show you how you set that up. So when you're wanting to create a quilt, most of the time, if we were to create a new quilt, oh, dang, I'm not quite sure how to do this because it just always does this for me. So I'm not quite sure where to go here. Anyhow, we'll just go ahead and I'll change this real quick. Okay, I'm going to assume that Electric Quilt has remembered what the last quilt that I created on the work table was. So I'm just going to assume that. And here I've made a quilt layout that is 81 by 81 with 3 blocks with 9 total blocks, 3 horizontal and 3 vertical. And then the finished size blocks are 27 inches large. That's pretty funny, huh? Okay, so what we're wanting to do here is we need to know the number of blocks we have. Well, I know we have 6 in this row, and we only need 1 row. So we're going to change that to 6 and 1. And then we're going to take and we're going to change our width to what we know we need. I would like my row to be 10 inches wide. And the height, I would like it to be 9 inches. We'll just go with that. That's what it currently is set at. But you could do this any way you want. The idea is that our rows for EQ seasons all had to be 60 inches. But if we were to increase this to 72, you only had 6 blocks, then you might want to make your width a little bit different. 12 inches, for instance. Okay, so as long as you come out the way you want it to. So I'm just going to change this back to 10. Okay, so now we're not going to add any borders because this is just a row, and that's how I just plan to keep it for now. On the layer 1 only accepts blocks or blocks from the blocks tab of Sketchbook. Layer 2 accepts only motifs from the Motif tab. Layer 3 is for putting in your stencils and threads and that kind of thing. So you just kind of have to remember that. I tend to have the most problem with this part, but I do get it at some point. So anyway, we're going to start here today with the blocks tab. I'm just going to quickly show you how that works. You just drag over your block to make it work. Another thing I might point out is that you have the option here to go to Quilt Work Table Options, Setting Blocks, and you can set the size of the blocks as well so that it will allow you to just slide them in. Now, it doesn't always work quite that way. I mean, if you, oh, this is not being nice to me. If I set this down here, it's just doing its thing. And if you make a mistake, you can just come here and fix that mistake. We'll make sure we don't have any extra stuff here. And this is just working really great for me today, and I don't know why. So here we go. This is our first pieced block, or our first piece row. It was just that simple. Wasn't that simple? It was just simple. Okay, so Now we might want to take and add some extra trees. Well, you can't add any more pieced blocks because there's no room to do so. And if you had additional rows and squares for those rows, you could, but we want to add some little extras at this point. So that's where the motifs come in. You can take and you can drag a motif anywhere you want it to go, and then you can take and resize by using the selection window and then dragging it to a smaller size, you know, any which way you want here. And then you can set it in place. Then you could take this tree here. Oh, you can't with this, I'm sorry. I can't do that. So what I'd have to do, I can't send this to the back either, so it's going to be on the top no matter what I do. I'll show you a difference in a moment. Okay, but that's how cool having motifs are. Is because with the block, I wouldn't be able to resize this unless I went in to the image work table and resized it and that kind of thing. It just wouldn't work. So I'm stuck with that. I probably could do it here as well, change the size also, but I don't have that option. So consequently, this is where motifs just become really cool. And you can put it anywhere you want. And you can do this with any of the motif shapes. You know, I could put this up here, you know, so if I wanted to create lots of rows on the quilt, that's what could happen. So I could essentially add more trees. I really love this tree. This one really is just my favorite one of all the trees. And you could just continue to add trees until you're happy, and then you just would send them to your sketchbook, and consequently you'll end up with something like row 2 here. Row 2 is what I want. This one is all motifs, so I'm going to show you how to do that. The only pieced block in here is the background. So let's do that one now. Okay, so I'm going to take and remove those. When you want to remove, just highlight it and press the delete button on your keyboard. I don't remember if this is usable on there or not. Let's have a look and see. Yes, it will, but what it does is it leaves this great big square, and then you have to come back and delete it. So it's better to just use this one in the first place to select and delete it. When you're on the layer 1 tab, this is where you use this, and you just come along here and voila, they're all gone. There's no extra. It doesn't give you the option to select here. So you don't have any extras going on here. There's nothing that you can delete that's extra. So let's go ahead and I'll show you now how to do working with just motifs only. If you wanted to take and add a fabric background, this is how motifs are mostly added. Oh, they're on the pieced block because it's thinking, you know, this is pieced. So that's pretty much how you would add your pieced blocks. And you have to do that on layer 1 when you're adding the background. See, I forget. So that's why I say I get confused. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we know we want to add those background blocks, and that's why these are here. We have a normal non-reversed one, and we have one that I've created in reversed because I'm wanting my, if I were to put them like this to non-reversed, you can see what would happen to the background, and maybe that's not so bad, but someone's going to wonder what happened to that hill. So that's why we want to have the reversed one going in the opposite. And I tried to emphasize that in the PDF tutorial as well, but I think I should add that actually. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and add these here. I'll move this over here so I can add the last two. And then I'll go to layer 2. And I will show you how to add the trees. And you can just put the trees anywhere. You know you're going to use them all. And it's, oops. Be right back. It's strange because the blocks should not have gone on the layer 2 tab. So I don't know why they did that. So here we go with the trees. We can just throw them onto the worksheet because we're just going to move them around and play with them and have some fun. Okay, so then we're going to take this and we're going to highlight it and move it into place. I'm not putting these in the same way that the row that I created for EQ Seasons is because we're just playing and we're just having some fun. And I think it's great because this shows you the versatility of EQ and what you can do with it. And like I say, this is just a project file that I downloaded. Well, it's mine. I didn't have to download it. But I'm saying that any project file gives you these options to do this. So this is where it's really cool to be able to take and do this kind of thing. So we'll add a few more of these trees. Add one over here. I really like this tree, so I tend to go to it. And this one is nice too, and this one is cool. And so we'll just take and we'll just resize these down a little bit. And like I wanted to show you here, if you wanted to set this so it's close together, but you want your other tree to be on the top, you would just come up here to your send to front and send it to the front. If you send it to the back, I don't know what, it won't go to the back of the piece, but it will go behind this tree. Okay, so I want to send this to the front. And we'll take and resize this. You can make this taller if you want. You can even set it on the seam. Now that means you'd have to stitch it on after you stitch your other blocks on, but it's a great way to hide those seams, you know, so that you don't have them showing. And I kind of like that idea. I really wouldn't want those seams showing, so I would add more blocks to have that happen. I mean, it's not like you can totally lose it, but you can see how it definitely helps take away from some of that. Okay, so this is really nice. And what happens is once you're ready to print this out, you cannot go back to the block worksheet and have these automatically sized for you. That's just not going to happen. So what you need to do to print them out is then you would take your selection and you would print this. If you're on layer 1, you already know that your blocks are 10 by 9. So you can easily go back to the work tab and do it. But here, when you've resized from the quilt table or the quilt block worksheet, you need to do it from here. So I'm going to print these really quickly to templates just so I can show you. I want to choose custom block size. It's got my size in here of what this should be. It should be giving me this. And why it's not doing that properly, I don't know today. Use size from quilt. Okay, I guess I'll use the size from the quilt. And I will then have this show up for me in the size that it should be on the row. I don't know why I'm getting those confused. Maybe it's because it's 4 a.m. or something. I don't know. But anyway, this is usually my uptime, so it's odd. Okay. As you can see, it shows the name of the row, and it shows me the size down here, and it tells me that the key block is a certain percentage size of the actual one on the row. but this is still a nice size, and it definitely changes the shape a little bit of the original tree, and it's kind of nice to be able to have that ability. Okay, now if I were on layer 1 and I came to do this, this should give me the 10 by 9 size, use size from Quilt. And as you can see, it would give me the square, which you wouldn't really see and is not on my template, because that's a 10 by 9 square, and I'm just going to add the seam allowances and cut it as a square. No need for me to do that. But then you could just take and move this over so that it fits entirely on one piece of paper, and you wouldn't have to line up these two lines. Then, excuse me, and then you have this other piece. And so these two pieces right here are your sky and your snow fabric, and those are the only two pieces you need. Now for this one, I will cut this in muslin so that I could house these two on the muslin to put the two parts together, and then that way you can set your other shapes on. And muslin is light enough that it won't affect the weight of your quilt or anything like that. That's why I recommend muslin over a solid fabric, because solid fabrics tend to be a little bit higher on the count. So those are the differences between blocks and motifs, and how you work with them to resize, and how you cannot resize the pieced block. Remember, cannot resize the pieced block unless you go into the quilt work table options, or if you go to the layout option and change it here. On layer 2, you can only change the size of motifs. So you want to keep that in mind. Remember that motifs don't have a background and blocks have a background, and that's the difference. So I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. I tried to keep it short. It's 22 minutes now, so I'm going to say goodbye, and we'll see you next week with a new EQ lesson. Bye-bye for now.